All right, so we're going to pick up now and talk about encoding. So when we're talking about this encoding information, there's kind of this dual track that we use. We use both explicit and implicit memories. So far, we've been really focusing in on these explicit or declarative memories. These are facts and experiences that we can consciously know and recall. These are the things that we can say. These are the things that school asks you to use. You know, what are the facts? What are the figures? Tell us what you know. Okay, our minds acquire this information through what we call effortful processing. Explicit memories are formed through studying, rehearsing, thinking, processing, then storing information into the long-term memory. Okay, like it says, it's effortful. We have to try and remember these things. Now, some memories, though, are formed without going through all of those stages. Remember, we talked about how some of them kind of skip over and go all the way to the long-term memory. These are what we call implicit memories. They're the ones that we're not fully aware of and thus we don't declare or talk about. And these memories are also kind of referred to as automatically processed memories. Okay, implicit memories are formed without our awareness that we are building a memory and without rehearsal or other processes in our working memory. Okay, so our effortful, we have to put effort. Automatic is stuff that just kind of automatically happens. So for instance, if I said to you, "What did you have for lunch yesterday?" you could probably tell me. Now, you weren't sitting there at lunch saying, "Mrs. Bailey is going to ask me what I had for lunch," so you didn't effortfully, process that information, but it kind of just automatically processes. A lot of the things that are automatically processed memories are things like time and space, and those types of things. Okay, and again, when we have explicit and implicit memories, explicit are the memories that we have to explain. Explicit, explain. Okay, implicit are the ones that are kind of just like procedural, things that we can just do. Now, automatic processing, some experiences go directly to the long-term implicit memory. And this happens, procedural memory, things like how to ride a bike, well-practiced knowledge, such as word meanings. Conditioned associations, such as a smell that triggers thoughts of a favorite place. Information about space, such as being able to picture where things are after walking through a room. You guys could probably all shut your eyes and picture certain rooms that you've spent a lot of time in. And information about time, such as retaining a sequence of events if you lost something. This is one of the reasons why you lose your keys and you think back to the last place that you had them, because we oftentimes remember a lot of that stuff on a very unconscious level. Information about frequency as well, such as thinking, "I just noticed that this is the third texting driver I've passed today." Now, you probably on the first and second didn't make a conscious effort to remember that, but you still process that in this explicit way, the implicit type way. So encoding in the process of memory. Sensory memory is kind of at the key to all of this encoding. So sensory memory refers to the immediate, very brief recording of sensory information before it's processed into the short-term working or long-term memory. Okay, so we very briefly capture a sensory memory. It's analogous to like an echo or an image of all the sensations that we take in. Okay, how brief is it? Well, sensory memory consists of about a 3 to 4 second echo, something we hear, or a 1/20th of a second image. Okay, evidence of auditory sensory memory, called echoic memory, can occur after someone says, "What did I just say?" Even if you weren't paying attention, you can retrieve about the last 8 words from the echoic memory, right? Your teachers might do this to you in class, you're daydreaming, you're not doing, they call on you and they say, "What did I just say?" You could probably pick up the last few things that they said, off of luck. Okay, so again, the real test, if you want to test if somebody's listening to you, don't ask them what they just said, ask them what they said kind of at the beginning of the conversation. Okay, so echoic memory is auditory, iconic is the imagery stuff that we use. Now, what is the evidence of this visual or iconic memory? George Sperling did an experiment, and what he did is he exposed people to a 1/20th of a second view of a grid of letters, followed by a tone which told them which row of letters to pull from iconic memory and recall. Okay, without the tone, people recalled only about 50% of the letters. With the tone, recall for any of the rows was typically 100%. So let's kind of try this. Okay, notice in a minute, there's going to be 3 rows of letters that are going to flash on this section of the screen. Based on the color of the letters, you will know you will know that you must recall one of the following rows. Okay, so pay attention to this. okay? And then pay attention to the letters that flash on the bottom of the screen. Can you recall? All right. The capacity of the short-term and working memory. So some of the information is selected from sensory memory to be sent to the short-term memory, but how much can we hold there? Well, George Miller, okay, this is really important. You have to remember George Miller proposed that we can hold 7 plus or minus 2 information bits, okay? For example, a string of 5 to 9 letters. And we call this the magic memory number. George Miller's magic number. Okay, 7 plus or minus 2. Now, more recent research suggests that the average person, free from distraction, can hold about 7 digits, 6 letters, or 5 words. Okay, but for your sake, what you really need to remember is Miller's magic number is 7 plus or minus 2. Okay, so working memory, this is kind of what our short-term memory is referred to, which uses rehearsal, focus, and analysis, linking, and other processes, has a greater capacity than short-term memory. The capacity of working memory varies. Some people just have better concentration, okay? So our short-term memory capacity is 7 plus or minus 2, but working memory, okay, which is kind of this conscious using all of this information, has a much bigger variety than just the traditional short-term memory. So we're going to do a little test to see how many of these letters and numbers you can recall. Okay, they're going to come across the screen right in this area where the mouse is. Okay, and you don't need to remember the hyphen, okay, before the V, but what you need to do is see how many you can recall. All right, now write down as many as you could remember on your outline. Did you get them? How many did you find? Most of you are probably going to find that you recalled somewhere between, 5 and 9. And we're going to do more tests on this in class to demonstrate this in a different setting than watching on the computer screen. All right, now what is the duration of the short-term memory? Well, Lloyd Peterson and Margaret Peterson wanted to know what the duration was. So they did an experiment in 1959, and people were giving triplets of consonants, such as V, M, F. Okay, and to prevent rehearsing, the subjects had to do a distracting task. People were then tested at various times for recall. Okay, and the result was, after 12 seconds, most memory of the consonants had decayed and could not be retrieved. Okay, so with no rehearsal, there was a very, very rapid decay of information. So what does this tell us? Well, rehearsal is very important for short-term memory and getting stuff from short-term into long-term. So effortful processing strategies. What are some ways that you can boost your encoding? Well, if we only have short-term recall of only 7 letters, but can remember 5 words, doesn't it mean that we could remember more than 7 letters if we could group them into words? Well, this is an example of an effortful processing strategy, okay, which is a way to encode information into memory to make it, to keep it from decaying and to make it easier to retrieve. Okay, this effortful processing is also known as studying. So here are your study tips to help make your studying much more productive. Okay, some examples: chunking, grouping things together. Okay, taking lots of information and consolidating it into smaller chunks. Okay, mnemonics. Okay, mnemonic devices are memory aids. Things like creating imagings, drawing maps, peg words. You can create hierarchies and concepts. You can use rehearsal, especially distributed practice. Okay, deep processing, semantic processing, making information personally meaningful. All of these things are going to increase your ability to encode information. Okay, so another test. Can you remember this list? All right, chunking. What is this? Okay, have you ever wondered why credit card numbers are broken into groups of 4 digits, or why your social security number, phone numbers? Well, 4 chunks are easier to encode and memorize and recall than 16 individual digits. So for instance, if I were to ask you to memorize this, you would all probably freak out. Could you even remember that? Now, when we chunk, we organize data into manageable units. So again, here's the same letters. Would this be easier? Maybe, maybe not. Now, chunking works even better if we can assemble information into meaningful groups. How about now? Okay, so what were our letters? X, IDK, KFC, FBI, BA, NAA, CP, CVS, SUV, ROFL, NBA, and Q. Now, chances are you probably remembered more chunks of this last than you did the first time. Why? Well, because some of these are meaningful. KFC, FBI, CVS, SUV, NBA, IDK, I don't know, ROFL, we know what that means, NAACP. Okay, so these now, instead of being random, 16 random individual digits, we've now chunked them into more meaningful groups that we already have some we already have some information in our long-term memory with. Now, mnemonics are another great way to increase effortful processing, okay? So, of this list, plain, cigar, do, shall, candy, vague, pizza, seam, fire, and pencil, okay? Which words might be the easiest to remember? Write down the words that you can recall. Lesson here is that we encode better with the help of images. Okay, so again, if you see a picture of a cigar, a picture of pizza, a picture of a pencil, you probably remembered those from that list better because you had mental imagery. Okay, so a mnemonic is a memory trick that connects information to existing memory strengths such as imagery or structure. Okay, the peg word system refers to the technique of visually associating new words with an existing list that is already memorized along with numbers. For example, do can be pictured written on a door and the door equals 4, right? All right. Rehearsal and distributed practice. Massed practice refers to what all of you guys do, cramming information all at once. It's not time effective and it doesn't work. The spacing effect was first noted by a guy named Urban Ebbinghaus in the late 1800s. Okay, what he said is that you will develop better retention and recall, especially in the long run, if you use the same amount of study time spread out over shorter sessions. So instead of cramming the night before a test and studying for 5 hours, you should take that 5 hours and study for an hour a day over the next 5 days, or a half hour a day over 10 days. Okay, but this doesn't mean that you have to study every day. Memory researcher Harry Barrick noted that the longer the time between study sessions, the better the long-term retention and the fewer sessions that you needed. Okay, so instead of studying for, let's just say, 2 hours the night before a test, maybe you could do a half hour, take a day off, a half hour, take a day off, a half hour, take a day off. Okay, so take the same amount of time, spread it out a little bit, but study at shorter amounts of time, or shorter time in one sitting, and you are going to remember the information better. Okay, so the best way to practice, consider the testing effect. Harry Rodinger found that if your distributed practice includes testing, having to answer questions about the material, you will learn more and retain more than if you merely reread. Okay, one of the things on the website is practice tests. Take the practice tests, okay, or have somebody ask you questions about the material. Study groups, all of those things are going to help you learn the information better than simply staring at the same page and staring at your notes over and over again. Now, in terms of, deep and semantic processing, when we encode information, we are more likely to retain it if we deeply process even a simple word list by focusing on the semantics, okay? Semantics is a word you need to know, and it's a fancy word for meaning of the words, okay? So deep processing is the type of, what is this type of? What does this relate to? How is this meaningful for me? Okay, shallower is the sound of the word, things like rhymes with. Okay, and the most shallower is the structural or the iconic, which is the appearance of the letters. How do things work? Or how do things look? I'm sorry. Okay, so memorize the following words: bold, truck, temper, green, run, drama, glue, chips, knob, hard, bent, rope. So, Could you memorize it? Maybe you did, but if we wanted to really memorize that, make information personally meaningful. And this is so important in psychology because all of this is about you. All of this is stuff that you do and you use. The more that you can make information personally meaningful, the easier it's going to be for you to recall it and to memorize it. So you can memorize a set of instructions more easily if we figure out what they mean rather than seeing them as a set of words. Okay, memorizing meaningful material takes 1/10 the effort of memorizing nonsense syllables. Actors memorize lines more easily by deciding on the feelings and meanings behind the words, so one line flows naturally into the next. The self-reference effect, relating material to ourselves, aids encoding and retention. This is so important in this class. The more you can use the self-reference effect to learn this material, the better. Okay, anytime we're talking about a concept in class, try to self-reference it. Find an event in your life that relates to the topic that we are talking about because you will remember that so much better than if you just try to do rote definitions from the book. All right, now let's try that list again, but this time consider how each word relates to you. Easier? All right, we're going to end there for today. Next time we'll pick up talking about